The bridge of the Coalition flagship shook violently as another explosion rocked the massive vessel. Admiral Vorath gripped the command console with his crystalline hands, his body flickering with angry red light. Through the viewport, he watched 3 more dreadnoughts explode in brilliant flashes of white and orange. The Vreth ship swarmed like angry insects, their biomechanical hulls twisting and turning in ways that defied normal physics. The battle was lost. Vorath knew it. Everyone on the bridge knew it. The Coalition had brought 40 ships to defend the Parax system. 27 were already destroyed. The rest were burning, retreating, or dead in space. The Vreth had done it again. Superior numbers meant nothing against an enemy that learned and adapted faster than anyone could believe. Vorath ordered the retreat. His ship jumped away, leaving behind 40,000 dead and the burning wreckage of another defeat. In his private chamber, the Admiral stared at the star map. Red markers showed Vreth-controlled territory. It had grown larger every month for 3 years. Blue markers showed Coalition space shrinking like ice under a hot sun. The Coalition had tried everything. Massive fleet battles, guerrilla tactics, defensive formations. Nothing worked. The Vreth swarm adapted to every strategy within days, sometimes hours. 12 star systems had fallen. Billions were dead or displaced. And the Coalition was running out of ships, out of soldiers, and out of hope. Vorath made a decision he never thought he would make. He contacted Earth. The humans were newcomers to galactic society. They had been discovered only 5 years ago, living on a single world in a quiet corner of space. They had achieved faster-than-light travel through methods the Coalition found crude but effective. Their technology was primitive compared to most species. Their weapons were basic. Their ships were small and inefficient, but Earth had stayed neutral in the war. They watched, they learned, and they said nothing. Now Vorath had no choice. He needed every ally he could find, even primitive ones. Ambassador Nelith arrived at Earth's orbital station 3 days later. She was Quilarian, with skin that shimmered in soft colors that reflected her emotions. Right now, those colors were dark and troubled. She met with the human representatives in a stark white conference room that felt cold and uncomfortable. The humans listened to her presentation without interruption. They watched the footage of Vreth attacks. They studied the casualty reports. They examined the tactical analyses. When Nelith finished, there was a long silence. A human woman named Director Park spoke first. She was middle-aged with sharp eyes and gray hair pulled back tightly. Her voice was calm and measured. "We understand the situation is desperate," she said. "We will help, but not in the way you expect." Nelith felt a surge of hope. "How many ships can you send? 100? 200? Director Park smiled slightly. 1 ship. The color drained from Nelith's skin. She thought she had misheard. 1 ship against a swarm that had destroyed thousands? It was insulting. It was meaningless. It was worse than nothing because it showed how little humans cared. Director Park seemed to read her thoughts. "Ambassador, we do not have 1,000 ships to send, but we do not need 1,000 ships. We just need to send the right one." 2 weeks later, Nelith stood in Earth's primary orbital shipyard, staring at the vessel that would supposedly save the galaxy. The HKNS Indomitable was smaller than she expected. It was perhaps half the size of a Coalition cruiser. Its hull was dark gray, almost black, covered in panels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Weapon ports lined its surface like the scales of a predator. It looked dangerous, but not nearly large enough to matter. She met the captain on the bridge. Tae-Jin was in his late 40s, with short dark hair starting to show gray at the temples. He had calm eyes that suggested he had seen difficult things and survived them. He greeted her with a slight bow and a firm handshake. "Welcome aboard, Ambassador," he said. "I understand you have doubts about our mission." Nelith decided to be honest. "Captain, the Coalition is fighting hundreds of Vreth ships. You are 1 vessel. How can you possibly make a difference?" Tae-Jin gestured to his crew working at their stations. They moved with quiet efficiency, speaking in low voices. "Ambassador, you assume that warfare is about matching force with force, that whoever has more ships wins. But humans learned long ago that war is not won by the side with the most guns. It is won by the side that refuses to lose." The Indomitable departed Earth orbit the next morning. Nelith watched from the observation deck as the blue-green planet shrank behind them. She still did not understand what the humans planned to do. But something in Captain Tae-jin's voice made her want to believe. The journey to Coalition space took 12 days. During that time, Nelith observed the crew. The executive officer was a woman named Haiwan, sharp and direct, who seemed to think 3 steps ahead of everyone else. The weapons officer, Jae-sung, was young and confident, treating the ship's systems like musical instruments. The chief medical officer, Mi-sun, moved through the ship checking on everyone, her presence calming. The chief engineer, Kyung-soo, was a gruff older man who spoke to the ship's engines like they were his children. They were professional. They were competent. But Nelith still could not see how they could fight an entire swarm. When they arrived at Coalition Forward Base Sigma, Admiral Vorath's reaction was worse than Nelith feared. His crystalline body turned deep red with anger. "One ship, this is what Earth sends? This is an insult." Captain Tae-jin stood calmly before the Admiral. "Sir, give us one patrol route. Let us prove ourselves." Vorath wanted to refuse, but he had asked for help, and help had arrived even if it was pathetically small. "Fine," he said through clenched vocal structures. "Sector 7. Patrol for 2 weeks. Try not to get destroyed immediately." The Indomitable set out on patrol the next day. Nelith stayed aboard as the official liaison, though she suspected she was really there to witness the humans' inevitable failure. For 3 days they found nothing. Then on the 4th day, sensors detected 3 Vreth scout ships. Coalition protocol would be to call for backup and engage only with superior numbers. Tae-jin did not call for backup. He ordered his crew to battle stations and plotted an intercept course. The Vreth detected them and turned to attack. Nelith gripped her chair as the distance closed. The bridge was quiet except for calm reports from various stations. No panic, no fear, just focus. Then the battle began, and Nelith saw something she had never seen before. The Indomitable did not fight like coalition ships. It did not form defensive positions or trade fire at range. It moved like a predator, fast and aggressive. It used weapons Nelith had never seen, firing projectiles that moved at impossible speeds and beams that cut through Vreth armor like it was paper. The first Vreth scout exploded in 47 seconds. The second tried to flee but was caught by a swarm of human attack drones. The third attempted to adapt its shields, but Haiwan had already predicted the adaptation and adjusted their targeting. 3 minutes and 12 seconds after the battle began, it was over. All 3 Vreth ships were destroyed. The Indomitable had not taken a single hit. Nelith sat in stunned silence. Captain Tae-jin turned to her with that same calm expression. "Resume patrol?" he asked as if nothing remarkable had happened. She managed to nod. Tae-jin gave the order, and the ship continued on its route. Nelith immediately sent a report to Admiral Vorath describing what she had witnessed. She expected excitement. Instead, Vorath dismissed it as luck. But deep in Vreth territory, something else was happening. The swarm's central intelligence received data from the destroyed scouts. It analyzed the new enemy. It recognized a threat unlike anything it had faced before, and it began preparing a response. The war was about to change. One ship had arrived, and nothing would ever be the same. 2 weeks passed, and the Indomitable destroyed 17 Vreth vessels. Word spread through Coalition space like electricity through water. Crews who had known only defeat began speaking in hushed, hopeful tones about the human ship, the one that never lost, the one that fought like nothing they had ever seen. Admiral Vorath could no longer dismiss the reports as luck. He summoned Captain Tae-jin to Coalition headquarters for a strategic meeting. Nelith accompanied them, her skin now flickering with colors of cautious optimism. The war room was filled with Coalition commanders from a dozen different species. There were crystalline Thexians like Vorath, massive warrior Dramic with their armored hides, graceful Pelcor with their multiple limbs, and others. All of them turned to stare when Tae-jin and his executive officer Haiwan entered the room. The largest Dramic present was Captain Rex of the Dreadnought Ironwall. He stood nearly 8 feet tall, covered in thick gray armor-like skin. His voice rumbled like distant thunder. "So this is the famous human captain. You have destroyed a few scouts. Do not let it make you arrogant." Tae-jin bowed slightly. "Captain Rex, I have read about your service. 30 years defending Coalition space. You have my respect." The response surprised Rex. He grunted and said nothing more. Admiral Vorath began the briefing. The strategy was simple and defensive. Hold the remaining systems. Wait for reinforcements that might never come. Minimize losses. Survive as long as possible. When Vorath finished, Taejin raised his hand. With respect, Admiral, this strategy guarantees defeat. You cannot win by defending. You can only delay losing. The room erupted in angry voices. Who was this human to criticize coalition strategy? What did Earth know about fighting wars across the stars? Vorath raised a hand for silence. Then what do you suggest, Captain? Commander Haywan stepped forward and activated a holographic display. She showed patterns in Vreth movements that coalition analysts had missed. Supply routes, coordination delays, weaknesses in their adaptation process. You have been fighting the Vreth on their terms, Haywan explained. Matching your fleet against theirs, fighting where they are strongest. Instead, strike where they are weak. Disrupt their supplies, force them to react to you instead of attacking at their leisure. Captain Rex shook his massive head. We have tried offensive operations. They always end in disaster, because you attack with predictable formations and tactics, Taejin said quietly. The Vreth adapt to patterns, so stop using patterns. The debate continued for 2 hours. In the end, Vorath made his decision. The Indomitable would continue patrol duties. No offensive operations. Too risky. The meeting was dismissed. Back aboard the Indomitable, Lieutenant Jae-sung was frustrated. They are fools, he said angrily. We could end this war in months if they would listen. Dr. Mi-sun looked up from her medical reports. Be patient, Jae-sung. They have lost thousands of ships and millions of lives. Fear makes people cautious. Captain Taejin sat in his command chair, fingers steepled under his chin. They will ask for help eventually. We just need to be ready, he was right. 3 days later, the Vreth launched a massive assault on the Meridian cluster. It was a key coalition position, heavily defended by 40 ships including the Iron Wall. The battle began badly and quickly became worse. Aboard the Iron Wall, Captain Rex watched his tactical display with growing dread. The Vreth were using new tactics. They split his formation, isolated his ships, and destroyed them one by one. 15 coalition vessels were already gone. The rest were surrounded. Admiral Vorath's face appeared on the communication screen. Captain Rex, you must hold that position. We are trying, Admiral, Rex growled as another ship exploded nearby. But we need reinforcements. There was a long pause. Then Vorath said the words he never thought he would say. I am contacting the Indomitable. The distress signal reached the Indomitable 4 hours away from Meridian. Taejin studied the tactical data streaming in from the battle. It was as bad as Haywan had predicted. The coalition was fighting by their doctrine, and the Vreth had learned that doctrine perfectly. Chief Engineer Kyung-soo voiced what everyone was thinking. Sir, we are not designed for fleet battles. If we go into that mess, we might not come back. Dr. Mi-sun spoke up. Those are people dying out there. Good people who are trying their best. Taejin looked at his crew. We are going, but we will not fight their battle. We will fight our own. The Indomitable jumped to maximum speed. On the bridge, Haywan worked frantically analyzing the battle data. She found what she was looking for and smiled grimly. Captain, the Vreth coordination is too perfect. They have a command ship controlling the attack pattern. If we can identify and destroy it, their formation will collapse. Find it, Taejin ordered. When the Indomitable arrived at Meridian, the battle was in its final stage. 25 coalition ships were destroyed. The survivors were battered and desperate. Captain Rex was preparing to ram his damaged dreadnought into the largest Vreth ship, hoping to take some enemies with him. Then sensors detected a new contact. It was small. It was fast. And it was heading straight into the middle of the Vreth formation. What is that fool doing? Rex roared. They will be destroyed in seconds. But the Indomitable was not destroyed. It moved through the Vreth formation like a knife through water. Too fast for the enemy ships to target effectively. Jae-sung fired continuously, each shot precisely placed to disable rather than destroy, creating chaos without wasting ammunition. Haywan's voice was calm on the bridge. Command ship identified. Bearing 273, range 40,000 kilometers. It is the one hanging back from the main battle. All power to engines, Taejin ordered. Jae-sung, prepare quantum disruption torpedoes. The Indomitable accelerated toward the Vreth command ship. Enemy vessels tried to intercept, but the human ship was too fast and too unpredictable. Weapon fire hammered against its shields. Armor plating burned and melted. But it kept going. Shields at 18%, Kyung-soo reported. Hull breaches on decks 4 and 7. 20 seconds to firing range. Haywan counted down. The ship shook violently as more hits struck home. Sparks flew from damaged consoles. The lights flickered, but Tajin's voice remained steady. Hold course. 10 seconds. 5 seconds. Fire. 6 quantum disruption torpedoes launched simultaneously. They phased through the Vreth command ship's shields as if the shields did not exist. The explosions came from inside the enemy vessel, tearing it apart from within. The command ship broke into 3 pieces and detonated in a massive fireball. Across the battlefield, Vreth ships suddenly lost coordination. They began firing at random, sometimes hitting each other. Their perfect formation collapsed into chaos. Captain Rex stared at his tactical display in disbelief. Then he started laughing, a deep booming sound. All ships, he roared into the communication system. Attack now while they are confused. The coalition forces rallied. They pushed forward, destroying disorganized Vreth vessels. What had been a certain defeat became an unexpected victory. The surviving Vreth ships retreated, leaving behind debris and dead. The Indomitable limped away from the battle, its hull scorched and damaged. Ambassador Nelith had been thrown from her chair during the fighting. She pulled herself up, her skin flickering with colors of shock and awe. Captain Tai Jin was checking damage reports when Captain Rex's face appeared on the communication screen. The massive Dramek looked different, humbler. "Human Captain," he said slowly, "I owe you an apology in my life. The Iron Wall owes you everything." Tai Jin smiled slightly. "No apology needed, Captain Rex. We are all fighting the same enemy." That night, Admiral Vorath held an emergency council meeting. The mood was different from before, hopeful, energized. Vorath looked at Tai Jin with new respect. "Captain, I was wrong to dismiss your suggestions. The Coalition needs your expertise. I am forming a joint task force under your command. 6 Coalition ships will join the Indomitable. Your mission is to take the fight to the enemy." Tai Jin stood and bowed. "We will not let you down, Admiral." As the meeting ended, Nelith approached Tai Jin privately. "Captain," she said, her colors warm and grateful, "you have given us something we lost months ago. You have given us hope." Tai Jin looked out at the stars. "Hope is dangerous, Ambassador. It makes you believe you can win. And once you believe that, it becomes possible." But far away in Vreth territory, the swarm's central intelligence was analyzing everything. It had learned about human tactics. It had studied their weapons. And it was preparing something that would test the humans like never before. The war had changed, but it was far from over. Task Force Hammer assembled in Coalition space 1 week later. 7 ships in total. The Indomitable at the center. The mighty dreadnought Ironwall commanded by Captain Rex. 2 cruisers named Starfire and Vanguard. 3 destroyers called Sentinel, Nightfall, and Resolute. Together they represented 5 different species, all united under human command. The Coalition crews were nervous. They had spent years following strict military doctrine. Now they were being asked to abandon everything they knew and trust human methods. It felt wrong. Dangerous. But they had seen what the Indomitable could do, and they were willing to try. Captain Tai Jin spent the first 3 days running exercises. He broke apart their careful formations. He encouraged independent thinking. He rewarded creativity over procedure. The Coalition officers struggled with this freedom. One destroyer captain asked how they were supposed to coordinate if everyone did their own thing. Commander Haywan answered that question. "Coordination is not the same as rigid control. You coordinate on objectives, not methods. Each ship finds the best way to achieve the goal. Trust your instincts. Trust each other." Their first mission was to strike a Vreth supply depot deep in enemy territory. Intelligence showed it was defended by 20 patrol ships, orbital platforms, and minefields. Traditional Coalition strategy would require at least 30 ships for such an operation. Task Force Hammer would go with 7. The plan was simple in concept but terrifying in execution. They would use stealth to slip past outer defenses. The Indomitable would create a diversion. While the Vreth focused on the human ship, the Coalition vessels would destroy the depot. Then everyone would escape before reinforcements arrived. The journey through Vreth territory took 36 hours. They traveled with all systems at minimum power, barely detectable. Twice they passed within sensor range of Vreth patrols. Both times, Chief Engineer Kyung-soo managed to keep them hidden through clever power management. Ambassador Nelith spent much of the journey talking with Lieutenant Jae Sung. The young weapons officer had become somewhat arrogant after their victories. He spoke confidently about human superiority, about how they would teach the galaxy to fight properly. Nelith challenged him gently. Do you truly believe humans are better than all other species? Jae-sung thought about this. Not better, he said finally, just different. We think about war differently. We see it as a problem to solve, not a ritual to follow. But is that not arrogance? Nelith asked. To assume your way is correct? Jae-sung had no answer to that. The conversation stayed with him. They reached the staging position outside the Kilo system. The Vreth depot hung in orbit around a barren planet, surrounded by defensive structures. It was even more heavily defended than intelligence suggested. Commander Hae-won studied the sensor readings. Something is wrong, she said quietly. These defenses are too organized, too prepared. Captain Tae-jin trusted her instincts. What are you thinking? I think they are expecting us. I think this might be a trap. The other captains wanted to abort the mission, retreat and find another target. But Tae-jin made a different decision. We spring the trap intentionally. Let them think they have caught us. Then we show them what humans do when cornered. Captain Rex's voice came over the communication system. You want us to walk into a trap on purpose? That is insane. Perhaps, Tae-jin replied, but the Vreth will not expect it. They predict we will flee, so we attack instead. There was a long silence. Then Rex laughed that booming laugh of his. Very well, human. We will try your insane plan. But you owe me several barrels of that drink you call whiskey if we survive. Task Force Hammer charged into the system at full speed. The Vreth were indeed waiting. Ships that had been hiding on the far side of the planet emerged. The patrol count went from 20 to 35. Hidden defense platforms activated. The trap closed around them, but instead of trying to escape, the task force drove deeper into the system. They split into 3 groups, each moving independently. The Vreth coordination, prepared for a retreat, faltered against an aggressive multi-pronged attack. The Iron Wall led one group, its massive guns hammering the orbital platforms. Captain Rex discovered he enjoyed this style of fighting. No careful formations, no waiting for orders, just finding targets and destroying them. The cruisers Starfire and Vanguard worked together, clearing the minefields. Their captains, once rigid-by-the-book officers, found themselves inventing tactics on the fly. When Starfire's shields failed, Vanguard moved to cover it without being ordered. When both ships found themselves surrounded, they worked back-to-back, protecting each other's weak points. The 3 destroyers hunted Vreth patrol ships like a pack of wolves. Sentinel would draw enemy fire while Nightfall and Resolute flanked from different angles. They adapted their patterns constantly, never letting the Vreth predict their next move. The Indomitable moved through the chaos like a ghost. Jae-sung fired with precision, each shot carefully chosen for maximum effect. When Dr. Mi-sun reported casualties coming in from other ships, Tae-jin maneuvered to draw fire away from the damaged vessels. When Chief Kyung-soo warned that their power systems were overheating, Tae-jin gave him 2 minutes to fix it, while the ship dodged through an asteroid field. But then disaster struck. Destroyer Sentinel took a direct hit to its engine core. The ship began tumbling out of control, unable to maneuver. Vreth ships immediately swarmed toward it, sensing an easy kill. Captain Rex saw what was happening. The Iron Wall was too far away to help. He shouted into the communication system. Sentinel, hold on! We are coming! But the Indomitable was closer. Tae-jin did not hesitate. All power to engines. Get us between Sentinel and those Vreth ships. The human ship accelerated to dangerous speeds, arriving just as the Vreth were about to finish off the crippled destroyer. The Indomitable placed itself directly in the line of fire, its shields absorbing hits meant for Sentinel. Shields failing, Kyung-soo reported. We cannot take much more of this. We do not need to, Tae-jin replied. We just need to buy time for the others to arrive. The other ships of Task Force Hammer converged on the position. Captain Rex arrived first, the Iron Wall's guns blazing. The cruisers and remaining destroyers followed moments later. Together they drove back the Vreth attackers while Sentinel's crew made emergency repairs. In the confusion, Commander Hae-won spotted their real objective. The supply depot's main reactor had a weakness in its shielding, exposed for just 40 seconds. She transmitted targeting coordinates to all ships, all vessels, Tae-jin commanded. Focus fire on those coordinates. Everything you have. 7 ships fired simultaneously. Beams, missiles, projectiles, and energy weapons all converged on one point. The depot's shields overloaded. The reactor containment failed. The explosion that followed was visible from the other side of the system. The Vreth ships closest to the depot were destroyed instantly. The rest lost coordination as the blast disrupted their communication systems. Task Force Hammer used the chaos to break away. The damaged Sentinel supported between the Iron Wall and Indomitable. They jumped out of the system just as Vreth reinforcements arrived. All 7 ships survived, though Sentinel would need weeks of repairs. They had destroyed the depot, eliminated 38 enemy vessels, and proved that a small force using unconventional tactics could win against superior numbers. Back in Coalition space, the crew celebrated. Captain Rex personally brought several bottles of his homeworld's strongest drink to share with the humans. The Coalition captains talked excitedly about the battle, about the moment when rigid training gave way to instinct and creativity. But Lieutenant Jae Sung sat quietly in the corner. Dr. Misun noticed and approached him. "What troubles you? We won a great victory today. We almost lost Sentinel," Jae Sung said. "We almost lost those people because I was too confident in our abilities." Ambassador Nelith was right. "I was arrogant," Misun sat beside him. "War teaches hard lessons. The important thing is that you learned. Confidence is good. Arrogance gets people killed. Know the difference." Ambassador Nelith compiled a detailed report about the mission. She described how the human approach to warfare was transforming Coalition tactics, how captains who had followed rules their entire careers were learning to think creatively, how humans did not view war as a series of procedures but as a constantly changing puzzle to solve. Admiral Vorath read the report with growing interest. He authorized 6 more joint task forces, each led by human officers. The war was beginning to shift. Slowly, carefully, the Coalition was learning to fight like humans. But in the depths of Vreth territory, the swarm's intelligence was also learning. It had been studying human tactics for months now. It understood how humans thought, how they adapted, how they refused to follow patterns. And it was developing a counter-strategy specifically designed to exploit the one weakness humans had: their aggression, their refusal to retreat, their determination to save every single life. The Vreth were preparing a trap so perfect, so devastating, that even human creativity might not be enough to escape it. The darkest test was coming, and nothing would ever be the same again. 3 months of victories had made the Coalition confident. Task Force Hammer had grown to 30 ships. They had won engagement after engagement. The Vreth had been pushed back 2 full star systems. For the first time in years, it seemed the war might actually be winnable. But Captain Taejin could not shake a feeling of unease. The Vreth retreats were too organized, too controlled. It did not feel like an enemy in panic. It felt like an enemy with a plan. Commander Haiwan shared his concerns. She had been studying Vreth movement patterns for weeks. Something was wrong. The swarm was not fighting back as hard as they should. When she presented her analysis to Admiral Vorath, he dismissed her worries. The Coalition was winning. Why question success? Lieutenant Jae Sung had changed in the months since the Kalos mission. He was no longer arrogant, but he had become something else. Hardened, confident in a quieter way. He trusted his abilities, but no longer assumed victory was guaranteed. Dr. Misun approved of the change. War had made him grow up. Then came the orders for the Great Offensive. Admiral Vorath planned to strike deep into Vreth territory and capture their main stronghold system. 200 Coalition ships would participate, including Task Force Hammer. It would be the largest offensive operation in the war's history. Taejin requested a private meeting with the Admiral. "Sir, I must advise against this operation. My instincts tell me the Vreth are luring us into a trap." Vorath's crystalline body flickered with irritation. "Captain, I respect your tactical genius, but we have momentum. We must press our advantage while we have it. The fleet launches in 6 hours. There was no changing his mind." Taejin returned to the Indomitable and gathered his senior officers. "I want all systems checked and double-checked. Emergency protocols ready. If this goes bad, and I believe it will, we need to be ready." Chief Engineer Kyung-soo spoke up. "Sir, if you think it is a trap, why are we going?" "Because 200 Coalition ships are going," Taejin replied. "And when the trap springs, they will need us." The Coalition fleet jumped into the target system in perfect formation. 200 warships representing every species in the Alliance. It was a magnificent sight, and the initial signs were good. Vreth resistance was light, almost too light. For 6 hours, the Coalition advanced steadily. They destroyed Vreth ships with ease. They captured orbital positions. Everything was going according to plan. Coalition Command was celebrating. Admiral Vorath was already composing his victory speech. Then the sensors detected something impossible. 400 Vreth ships emerging from faster than light, surrounding the Coalition fleet on all sides. They had been hiding, waiting, and now the trap closed like a fist. What followed was a massacre. The Vreth had studied human tactics for months. They knew how the Coalition would respond to being surrounded. They had developed specific counters to every strategy. Electronic warfare systems jammed Coalition communications. Adaptive shields negated quantum disruption torpedoes. Coordinated firing patterns destroyed ships before they could adapt. Captain Rex fought desperately aboard the Iron Wall, but even his mighty dreadnought was overwhelmed. The ship that had survived dozens of battles was torn apart in minutes. Rex's last transmission was simple: tell the humans they were right. Then his signal went dead. Across the battlefield, Coalition ships were dying. The cruiser Starfire exploded when its reactor core breached. The destroyer Nightfall was cut in half by concentrated fire. Ship after ship fell to the Vreth onslaught. After 3 hours, 80 Coalition vessels were destroyed. The rest were damaged, surrounded, and running out of options. On the Indomitable's bridge, the situation was desperate. The ship had taken heavy damage protecting other vessels. Its shields were failing, hull breaches on 4 decks, casualties mounting. Dr. Meeson worked frantically in medical bay trying to save crew members faster than they were being wounded. Lieutenant Jae-sung felt something he had not felt in months. Fear. Real fear. His weapons were barely scratching the Vreth ships. Every tactic he tried, they had a counter for. It was like fighting his own ghost. "Captain," he said, his voice shaking slightly, "nothing is working. They are predicting everything we do." Taejin grabbed the young officer's shoulder. "Look at me, Jae-sung. You wanted to prove humans were survivors. Now prove it." The words steadied Jae-sung. He took a breath and returned to his station. Commander Hae-won was working faster than she had ever worked in her life. The Vreth had adapted to human unpredictability by becoming unpredictable themselves. The solution hit her suddenly. It was so simple it was almost stupid. "Captain," she said urgently, "they have adapted to us adapting. So we need to stop adapting. We need to go back to chaos. Pure uncoordinated chaos." Taejin understood immediately. He opened channels to all surviving Coalition ships. "All vessels, this is Commodore Taejin. New orders. Abandon all tactical coordination. Every ship acts independently. No formations. No patterns. Just survive and make them pay for every meter. Fight like your life depends on it, because it does." The response was confused at first. Abandon coordination? That went against everything they had been taught, even the human way. But they trusted Taejin. They had learned to trust him with their lives. The battlefield transformed into complete chaos. Ships fought individually, each captain using whatever tactics came to mind. There was no pattern to predict, no strategy to counter. Some ships rammed Vreth vessels. Others used debris as weapons. Still others improvised completely new attack methods on the spot. The Vreth coordination, designed to counter organized human tactics, faltered against pure chaos. Their perfect counters became useless when there was nothing to counter. Individual Vreth ships were more powerful, but they had forgotten how to fight without central coordination. Lieutenant Jae-sung found his courage again. He started firing weapons in combinations that made no tactical sense but were impossible to predict. He mixed long-range and short-range weapons. He fired at asteroids to create debris storms. He even launched torpedoes backwards as mines. Nothing he did followed any doctrine, and it worked. The battle raged for 8 more hours. It was brutal, desperate, and costly. But slowly, impossibly, the Coalition began to turn the tide. They were not winning, but they were surviving. And sometimes survival is its own victory. Finally, a gap opened in the Vreth encirclement. It was small and would not last long. Admiral Vorath, aboard his badly damaged flagship, gave the order to retreat. The surviving Coalition ships fled through the gap, the Indomitable covering their escape. When they reached safe space and counted the losses, the numbers were devastating. 120 ships destroyed, over 40,000 dead. It was the worst defeat in Coalition history. The Great Offensive had become the Great Disaster. The surviving crews were broken. Some blamed the humans for teaching them tactics the Vreth had learned to counter. Others blamed Admiral Vorath for ignoring warnings. Most just mourned their dead friends and wondered if the war could still be won. Captain Taejin stood alone on the Indomitable's observation deck, staring out at the stars. He had known it was a trap. He had warned them. But that knowledge brought no comfort. 120 ships, 40,000 people. Captain Rex, who had become a friend. All gone. Ambassador Nelith found him there. She had fought on the bridge during the battle, helping wherever she could. Her skin was dim, exhausted colors. "Captain," she said softly, "you saved us. Without your final order, we all would have died. Saving 80 ships is not the same as not losing 120, Taejin replied. No, Nelith agreed. But it is better than losing 200. The question now is what we do next. Taejin turned to face her. We end this war. Permanently. How? We just suffered the worst defeat in our history. A small smile touched Taejin's face. Because now we know exactly how the Vreth think. They adapt to patterns, so we give them the ultimate pattern to adapt to, and when they do, we cut off the head of the snake. 2 days later, Captain Taejin presented his plan to Coalition Command. It was insane. It was desperate. It gave them less than 15% chance of success. It required taking the Indomitable alone, deep into Vreth territory to strike at their homeworld, to destroy the central nexus that coordinated the entire swarm. Many commanders argued against it. They had just lost half their fleet. How could they risk more on such a crazy plan? But Admiral Vorath, humbled by defeat, made the final decision. We have tried careful strategies. We have tried human tactics. We have tried everything except trusting humans completely. The fleet will create a diversion at the Vreth homeworld. Captain Taejin and the Indomitable will finish what we started. If we are going to lose this war, we will lose it fighting. The vote was called. It passed barely. Operation Decapitation Strike was authorized. One ship would determine the fate of the entire galaxy. That ship was the Indomitable, and this time, there would be no second chances. The Indomitable underwent repairs for 2 weeks. Chief Engineer Kyung-soo worked day and night, replacing damaged systems, reinforcing the hull, installing experimental equipment that might give them an edge. He knew this was likely a one-way mission, but he would make sure the ship gave everything it had. Dr. Misun prepared Medical Bay for what was coming. She knew she could not save everyone. The thought haunted her nights. But she would try. She would try until her last breath. Lieutenant Jae-sung spent his time with the weapons systems. He was no longer the cocky young officer who had boarded this ship months ago. War had burned away his arrogance and left something harder, more focused. He calibrated every weapon personally, testing and retesting. When the moment came, he would not miss. Commander Haewon studied every piece of intelligence about the Vreth homeworld. She built 3-dimensional models of their defenses. She calculated probability trees for hundreds of scenarios. In every calculation, their odds were terrible. But terrible odds were not the same as impossible odds. Ambassador Nelith requested permission to remain aboard the Indomitable for the mission. Admiral Vorath tried to refuse, but she was insistent. These humans had taught her people how to hope again. If they were going to face death, she would face it with them. The night before the operation, Captain Taejin called his crew together. He looked at each face, young and old, human and alien. All of them volunteers who knew the risks. I will not lie to you, he said. Tomorrow we face the most dangerous mission of this war.
Many of us may not come back.
But if we succeed, we end this. We save billions of lives. We prove that determination and courage can overcome any odds. You are the finest crew I have ever commanded. It has been my honor to serve with you. There were no speeches in return. No grand declarations, just quiet nods and firm handshakes. They understood. They were ready. The coalition fleet assembled the next morning. 150 ships, everything the Alliance could gather. They would attack the Vreth homeworld directly, drawing every enemy vessel to defend it. While the Vreth focused on this massive threat, the Indomitable would slip through and strike at the Nexus. The fleet jumped together. When they emerged at the Vreth homeworld, the sight was terrifying. More than 500 enemy ships in orbit, orbital fortresses that bristled with weapons, defense platforms surrounding the planet like a shield. It was the most heavily defended location in Vreth space. Admiral Vorath gave the order, all ships engage. For the coalition. For the galaxy. For everyone we have lost. The battle erupted in fire and light. The coalition fleet drove forward aggressively, accepting losses to maintain pressure. They fought with everything they had learned, mixing human tactics with their own traditional strategies. The Vreth responded with their full might, exactly as predicted. While hundreds of ships battled in space, the Indomitable activated its experimental cloaking system. The device would only work once, burning out after a single use. But once was all they needed. The ship became invisible to sensors and slipped away from the main battle. They approached the Vreth homeworld from an unexpected angle, moving slowly to avoid detection. For 30 minutes they drifted closer, every crew member barely breathing. Then, just as they reached the outer defense perimeter, the cloaking system failed early. Orbital platforms immediately detected them. Alarms blared across Vreth defensive networks. Weapon systems locked onto the single human ship that dared approach their homeworld. Tae-Jin did not hesitate. All power to engines and shields. Get us to that planet. The Indomitable accelerated to maximum speed, racing toward the surface. Fire came from every direction. The ship twisted and turned, but there was nowhere to hide. Shields absorbed hit after hit, failing section by section. Jae-sung fired back, destroying 3 orbital platforms and creating a gap in the defensive fire. Kyung-soo rerouted power from every non-essential system, keeping the engines running despite catastrophic damage. Mi-sun worked in medical bay as the ship shook violently around her, treating wounded crew members while hanging onto her equipment. Hull breaches on decks 2, 4, and 6, Kyung-soo reported. Shields completely gone. We are flying on armor and prayers now. The prayers held long enough. The Indomitable broke through the final defensive layer and entered the atmosphere. The ship was not designed for atmospheric flight, especially not damaged as it was. But it fell toward the surface like a meteor, leaving a trail of fire across the alien sky. Hae-won guided them toward the Nexus facility using sensor data. It was deep underground, but there was an access point where their remaining weapons could penetrate. The problem was they were falling too fast to line up a proper attack run. Captain Tae-Jin made his final decision. He had always known it might come to this. Crew, this is the captain. Abandon ship. Get to the escape pods. All of you now. No one moved. Hae-won spoke first. With respect, sir, we are not leaving you. That is an order, Commander. Then I respectfully refuse to follow it, she replied. Around the bridge, heads nodded. Jae-sung remained at his weapons station. Kyung-soo stayed in engineering. Mi-sun continued treating the wounded. Nelith gripped her chair and watched with tears in her strange eyes. This was humanity. This was what they had brought to the galaxy. The absolute refusal to abandon each other. Tae-Jin felt pride swell in his chest. Then we see this through together. Jae-sung arm every remaining weapon. Kyung-soo overload the reactor core on my mark. Hae-won plot our descent to put us directly on top of that facility. 30 seconds to impact. The Indomitable fell like a hammer of the gods. Ground defenses fired continuously, but the ship was already a dying meteor. Nothing could stop it now. 20 seconds. The crew braced for impact, each lost in their own thoughts. 10 seconds. Jae-sung thought of his family. Mi-sun thought of all the lives she had saved. Kyung-soo thought of his ship, his beautiful ship. Hae-won thought of all the battles they had won. Tae-Jin thought of his crew, his family. 5 seconds, impact. The Indomitable crashed through the Nexus facility's outer structure and penetrated deep underground. The impact should have killed everyone instantly, but Kyung-soo had reinforced the crew section specifically for this possibility. Most survived the crash, battered and broken but alive. Tae-Jin pulled himself from his chair. Status report. We are inside the facility, Hae-won gasped. The Nexus chamber is 30 meters below us. Kyung-soo limped onto the bridge, blood running down his face. Reactor overload is armed. 2 minutes until detonation. We need to evacuate now. The crew evacuated the dying ship, helping injured colleagues through twisted corridors. They emerged onto the alien surface to find themselves surrounded by Vreth ground forces. But the soldiers were confused, disorganized. Without orders from the Nexus, they did not know what to do. The survivors ran as fast as they could. Behind them, the Indomitable's reactor reached critical mass. The explosion that followed was visible from orbit. It vaporized the Nexus facility and created a crater 3 kilometers wide. In space, the Vreth fleet suddenly went silent. Ships stopped moving. Weapons stopped firing. The central intelligence that had coordinated the entire swarm for years was gone. Without it, the Vreth vessels were just machines. Empty. Purposeless. Admiral Vorath watched in amazement as the enemy fleet drifted helplessly. "They did it," he whispered. "Those insane humans actually did it. Cease fire. All ships cease fire." The coalition fleet stopped shooting. There was no need. The war was over. After 3 years of death and suffering, it ended not with a massive battle but with silence. The Vreth swarm, the terror of the galaxy, was no more. Coalition rescue teams reached the surface of the Vreth homeworld within hours. They found the Indomitable's crew scattered but alive. 73 had survived the mission. Captain Taijin was among them, supporting an injured Kyungsoo. Commander Haiwan was already organizing the survivors. Lieutenant Jae Sung was helping Dr. Misun treat the wounded. Ambassador Nelith sat quietly, her skin showing colors of profound gratitude and sorrow. They had lost 48 crew members in the final assault. 48 more names to add to the thousands who had died in this war. But they had won. The galaxy was safe. 1 month later, the Coalition held a memorial ceremony. Every lost ship, every fallen warrior, they honored them all. Special tributes were given to the Indomitable and its crew, both living and dead. The survivors stood uncomfortably in their dress uniforms as speaker after speaker praised their courage. When it was Taijin's turn to speak, he kept it brief. "We did not win this war alone. Every Coalition species contributed. Every soldier who fought, every family who sacrificed, every person who refused to give up hope. They all won this war. We were just lucky enough to land the final blow." Later, standing before the memorial wall where the Indomitable was commemorated, Nelith found him. The inscription read, "They sent one ship." It was enough. "Those words will echo through history," Nelith said. "Humanity has changed the galaxy forever. You showed us that size and strength matter less than courage and creativity." Taijin shook his head. "We did not teach you anything you did not already know. We just reminded you that giving up is always a choice. And choosing to fight, no matter the odds, is what defines us all. Humanity formally joined the Coalition the next year. They did not send 1,000 ships to patrol the borders.